Good morning. Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony Diaz, and I am a fellow alum here at the School of Public Health. Have been involved with the Alumni Association and the Council for a very long time, almost 20 years. And it's our 20th class reunion for my class, so I know that some of my colleagues are here, the reunion year folks. Is everyone having a fun time so far? Awesome. It's one of my favorite events at the School of Public Health, the Alumni Weekend. Today, I'm very excited to kick off this program. This is the first program for today, and it's a case study, A Tower for the People, 425 Park Ave. Very exciting program here. It's going to be presented by Joe Allen and John Macomber. And you will see their bios are in the handouts that you have. But Joe has been here at the school for a very long time in environmental science, and John has a lot of things going on, but he's from the Harvard Business School, and we're going to have a very interesting and interactive conversation today around this case. So I don't hold it anymore, but enjoy the case.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Anthony. Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. So welcome back to the School of Public Health. I'm a associate professor in the Department of Environmental Health. I run Harvard's Healthy Buildings program. And what a time to be in public health, globally, nationally, and then also right here at the school with brilliant and great new leadership with Dean Baccarelli. In my department, we have a new chair, Kari Nadeau, focuses on climate and health. So there's good energy all around the school. We're going to talk about this case today, and I'm joined by a good friend and colleague, John Macomber from Harvard Business School. Came from private practice, owned a construction company, now teaches real estate finance, and really where he's focusing now is very much on climate adaptation and the future of cities. We collaborated on a book called Healthy Buildings. We brought a bunch in the back. You're welcome to take a couple of those. And we're going to talk about the case we wrote today about one of these healthy buildings and talk about some of the public health decision-making around it, but also the financial decisions, thinking about how we propagate these healthy building strategies across the wider market. We were joined on this case by a former doctoral student, now Dr. Emily Jones, who was a student at the School of Public Health and worked with us on this case study, which is a joint case study between the Business School and School of Public Health. So it's a nice collaboration. We're really lucky to have John from the Business School with us today. To set the stage on why buildings matter, I thought maybe we'd just talk for a second about what the public thinks about healthy living and what they would go to if you ask them what constitutes healthy living. So we're in the field of public health. People are going to say things like, I need to exercise. It's good public health. I need to eat well. I need to eat healthy. Shouldn't smoke. Need to sleep. Some people say outdoor air pollution is bad for us. But very few people, if any, would talk about the role the indoor environment plays on our health. This is having a major impact on our health because of the amount of time we spend indoors in all the places we spend our time, in our homes, in schools, and offices. But it's often neglected. And to tie this to public health science, one of the reasons I think it's not in the public consciousness so much is I think a lot of what the public knows about healthy living comes from the great human epidemiological cohort studies, including some of the best in the world right here at this school, like the Nurses' Health Study and the famous Harvard 6 Cities Outdoor Air Pollution Study, which follow tens of thousands of people for many decades, and we look at their behaviors and their environmental exposures, and we track their outcomes. And from that, this is where all the real great learnings of public health come from, many of them. But what's interesting about those cohort studies is that there's very little, if any, look at the buildings in those cohort studies. And so I think that's part of why it's escaped the public's consciousness. Buildings and indoor air quality haven't really captured the public's attention until COVID-19. So let's talk about this case. And we're going to talk about it in 3 parts. I'm going to give a little bit of background on the building. Then I'll talk about what I see from a healthy buildings perspective. And then I'm going to pass it to John for some interactive discussion around financial decisions around these buildings and what we think, or what you all think, is going to happen in the future going forward. So this building is designed by Lord Norman Foster, now a friend of mine. I'm part of his the Lord Norman Foster Institute on the Future of Cities. So he's a world-famous architect, and he talks about this building as a tower for the city and for the people in it. So we named this, based off his quote, this case, a tower for the people. It's at 425 Park Avenue, so not quite for the people, but for the people in the building. So this is Norman. This is how Norman operates. I've worked with him a lot now. So what does he do? He's a genius architect, takes out a napkin and he draws. This is this drawing for 425 Park Avenue. And then this is what the design firm turned into the nice architectural drawing of what this will look like. And this building is now built and up and functioning. And I was just there a couple days ago. I was in New York City for Climate Week. I walked by the building, took a picture. That's what it looks like today, just a couple days ago. Beautiful building, all sorts of great amenities, and it's I think nearly occupied at this point, nearly fully leased. So that's the building. And of course, in the building, if you walk by right on Park Avenue, you see etched into the glass of the building is Norman's sketch. So it's a beautiful building, but we're less interested. I mean, it's nice to look at, but I'm more interested in what's actually happening on the inside of the building, and John's going to talk about the economics of all of this. So I've been talking a lot about healthy buildings for a long time. John and I wrote this book before the pandemic, and I feel like it's a real time right now for this healthy buildings movement that's catching on. And I see 5 fundamental shifts that are changing and going to change practice going forward when it comes to all the spaces we spend our time. The first one's this. Of course, COVID changed our thinking, at least many people's thinking, around the importance of the indoor environment on respiratory disease transmission. This is a project I worked on with the New York Times to visualize what's happening in every single space we spend our time, including this room. We're all emitting respiratory aerosols, fine particles. If we're infectious, those particles can carry viruses. They float well past this non-existent 6-foot buffer and will fill the room like cigarette smoke, just like this. We use a classroom to demonstrate this. But this is a year into the pandemic. Early in the pandemic, January 2020, I was trying to get the attention of the New York Times editorial staff. I wrote a piece that said, this is an airborne virus. Therefore, buildings are key to the control through better ventilation filtration. They pushed back, saying that's not how these viruses spread. It spreads through surfaces. It's spread through these droplets that drop out of the air within 6 feet. And that was the existing paradigm. That comes from an error in the medical literature dating back 70 years that that's how respiratory pathogens are spread, through fomites or surfaces and large droplets, despite evidence suggesting otherwise. It took us about a year to break through before CDC said, yes, this virus is airborne. And that's critical because if you don't say it's airborne, what do? We spend the first year of the pandemic wiping down surfaces, elevator buttons, spraying, fogging rooms, and putting stickers on the floor telling people where to stand, and not addressing the air quality in the room. Of course, addressing the air quality in the room doesn't have to be all that hard or tricky. So in this model, we show what happens when these aerosols, they spread from an infectious student in this case. They fill the room, and when they fill the room, it explains super spreading events, an attack rate of 80%. One person infecting 80%. But if you have good ventilation and filtration, which can be opening a window or putting an air purifier in the room, it becomes hard, if not impossible, to have a super spreading event. So this room had bad air quality. I know it has good air quality. We work with our facilities team here. And I was infectious. Over the course of the hour, the room would fill up with respiratory aerosols that are infectious. You could see how I could infect people in the back row. If there is good ventilation and filtration, there's no way these infectious particles reach you in the back row. You cannot have that, these super spreading events. We could not publish science on respiratory pathogens being transmitted through the air in the top medical journals for decades. My field could not break through. It wasn't until a year into the pandemic that we finally landed articles in all the top medical journals acknowledging that airborne transmission is the dominant mode of transmission for respiratory pathogens. Believe it or not, there's widespread disagreement even for influenza prior to the pandemic about how it was spread. So this is now fully changed, a big paradigm shift in the medical and public health communities. And it's important because that means our buildings are important. We're not going back on that. I wanted to bring in Dr. Alice Hamilton, first female faculty member at Harvard, alum of this school, who also faced similar challenges 100 years ago around modes of transmission. So in her case, it was around lead exposure and workers. And she could not drive home the point, or it took her a whole career to drive home the point, that the air they were breathing was critical for understanding and mitigating their lead exposure. And it was thought at the time that all you had to do is wash your hands and you're fine. Hand washing is good public health practice, but it's not the only thing we need to do. And this is probably new since your time at the school. If you haven't passed by, in the opening of the entrance to the FXB lobby, we have now the bust of Dr. Alice Hamilton right in our lobby. She's the founder of the field of occupational and industrial medicine. So her lineage ties right into our current programs in our Department of Environmental Health. All right, second big shift. There's a policy shift underway. Also going back, way back. This is an interesting story of what's happening currently around policy around healthy buildings. So 150 years ago, Florence Nightingale said, "Cleanliness and fresh air from open windows, the only defense a true nurse either asks or needs." We knew this 150 years ago. In the late 1800s, a physician scientist, John Shaw Billings, concerned about TB, which is spread through the air, set the first health-based target for ventilation, 30 CFM per person. Just remember 30 cubic feet per minute per person. That's how much air comes into a room. 1895, 30 CFM per person was adopted by code-setting bodies, and in 1925, 22 states in the US required this health-based target of 30 CFM per person. And then something happened. In 1973, this standard was passed, the standard for acceptable indoor air quality, which reduced the amount of outdoor air coming into all the spaces you spend your time by half or more. We write in our book that acceptable is not acceptable as a target for indoor air quality. It was right about this time that this standard came out that we first started to see the term sick building syndrome appear. People getting sick in buildings from bad indoor air quality based on a standard that was no longer set for health, but it was set for odor control. Meaning the next person who walks in the room doesn't leave because it smells different in here. So we went from health-based standards to odor control standards. Then you had a virus that spread nearly entirely indoors in underventilated places, bump up against a building stock designed to be underventilated, underfiltered, and we had the disaster that we had. John and I worked on the Lancet COVID-19 Commission, and we put in Plan A place with the White House to help change this and course correct. So we wrote an article with colleagues talking about new health-based ventilation standards. Not quite new, 30 CFM per person. We had written this in our book before the pandemic came out. The public health evidence is clear, 30 CFM per person. We used this and had the first ever White House summit on indoor air quality. We brought in that science from the Lancet COVID-19 Commission, and the White House used this to nudge the standard-setting body responsible for the acceptable standard, these minimums, odor-based thresholds. And within a few weeks of that meeting, ASHRAE said they would come out with a health-based target. 6 months later, they released their first health-based target. The CDC released their first health-based ventilation target for buildings, actually on the same day. And there's scientists around the world also pushing for new standards back to this 30 CFM per person. So the lessons from our past, bringing them forward, we really lost our way in the 1970s. And for the past 40 years, we've been in the sick building era. But just like the scientific literature has changed forever, so are the policy drivers around healthy buildings. There's upward pressure coming back to increase ventilation rates and go back to a public health approach to designing and operating our buildings. All right, the third key shift that's happening right now is around awareness. So I've been in the field for 20 years. And I've never thought I'd see something like this. This is front page of the New York Times, above the fold, A1, the new war on bad air. I'm not talking about outdoor air, the new war on bad indoor air. Front page of the New York Times. That's a sign this is gaining traction beyond my discipline, John's discipline, or your discipline. 60 Minutes covered our work last year. So a 10-minute segment on indoor air quality and the role that building systems play. So we actually, 60 Minutes, we took them on tours of buildings to look at air quality systems and how they're influencing the health of people indoors. That's another sign not to be missed, that this has really taken hold. The fourth big shift here is a technology shift, and it's a power shift as well. And what's happening is that in the past, not so long ago, just even a couple years ago, you would have to guess about the air quality in a space like this. I don't know, is it good or bad? How do you feel in here? You don't really know. You can't see it. But there's been a proliferation of these low-cost air quality sensors, right? And now what used to cost $5,000 is about $100, and everybody can carry these wherever they want. And now we can check what the air quality is in a place like this. So people are doing this. If you look on Twitter or any other social media account, you will see these air quality sensors. People are talking about the air quality. They're shaming companies in some cases. And it represents a huge power shift because it's no longer, trust me, the building is good, trust me, the air quality in my restaurant is okay. It's the public or employees can verify the performance of your space. All right, so I know the air quality in here is good. So CDC set an air quality target, the first ever. They adopted our work from the Lancet Commission. It's 800 parts per million of CO2. Anybody have a guess at what the CO2 is in here? Trishan, there's a sensor behind you on that wall. Oh, it's hidden. All right, here's the other one. That has its batteries in it. So we're at under 700 parts per million. So we have lots of ventilation in this place, even with a space that's built like this. This one's telling the same thing. I can swap that one out for that right now. But it's a way for us to see what's happening in these spaces. But it's not just CO2. It's also particle levels. So you've probably been talking, well, we all know, we've been in the School of Public Health, PM 2.5, one of the main components of outdoor air pollution. Anybody know what the current threshold is for PM 2.5, the National Ambient Air Quality Standard? Limits on air pollution? EPA just lowered it. Went from 12 microgram per cubic meter to 9 micrograms per cubic meter. What's it in this room? Particle level. We meeting that? Yeah, we're less than 1 microgram per cubic meter. The air quality is here, and the reason it's low, we have a lot of ventilation. We also have high quality filters in our building. So we're cleaning that outdoor air as it comes in here. So our buildings are in good shape. But this is where the field is moving. These things are becoming widespread. I do walkthroughs in buildings all the time. And something really interesting happened just a couple weeks ago. I was talking to a tenant at a building, talking about this, but they were an expert already. And it turns out they told me they had been mapping the air quality in their building. This is just a worker in a building who had this same device. I showed it on CNN during the pandemic many times. I don't have a stake in this company. And but people are mapping their buildings where they work. So she was telling me about the building that I was there to kind of inspect. She knew where the problems were in the building because of these tools. And this is growing and going to grow quickly because ARPA-H, if you know DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects in the US, ARPA-H is the health arm of this, is putting $50 million towards the development of new sensors that don't just measure particles and CO2, but they actually measure specific viruses and bacteria in the air. So within a couple years, these devices won't tell you CO2 and particles. It's going to say, this is how many influenza virus are in this room right now. You can imagine the public running around with these with a virus number in every school, every airplane, every office. It's going to change things fast. It's real dollars going towards this. And ARPA-H is explicit that the goal is commercialization of the sensors and tie into buildings. So this power shift and technology shift is also accelerating. We're measuring here at the School of Public Health. Apparently not that. That one needs batteries. This is in the cafeteria where you had breakfast. So we're tracking this in our classrooms. We have other sensors in the mechanical, in the ductwork, and we look at that 800 part per million level. And even as students come into the classrooms, we see the CO2 pick up, the building responds, we keep everybody healthy and safe. The point is we're tracking what's happening. They're doing this in some of the classrooms at HBS, and they're also doing it at the Harvard Health Clinics. I advise Amazon. They rolled this out globally. All of Amazon's corporate offices now have air quality sensors. They're doing this. All right, the last one, I'm going to pass it to John, is the conversation is also shifting, of course, around climate. Not just COVID, but also climate, some dominant themes of the day. And so what that's doing in the building space is raising this question of, are healthy buildings and green buildings, energy efficient buildings, in conflict? Okay, pumping in all this extra outdoor air, using high-grade filters, that must use energy. Buildings consume 40% of global energy. In places like New York City, it's 70%. These things must be in conflict. I've been writing about this in Harvard Business Review, and John and I will talk a little bit about this when he comes up. But this is the current tension. Hey, we have to have good, healthy indoor air quality, but we have to be mindful of our responsibilities towards the planet. Can we do both? For the past 40 years, it's been treated as a dichotomous either or. You can have a healthy building or energy efficient. And we've been stuck in this kind of false choice space of not being able to have both. I can't be a choice to me, right? We can't have buildings that are great in terms of energy efficiency where people get sick inside. We can't have healthy indoor air quality and ignore our responsibilities to people on the planet. The other part of the climate story that's influencing buildings is not just climate mitigation, but climate adaptation. And I've been talking a lot about wildfires, like everybody else, and outdoor air pollution, but driving home a key point about buildings that not a lot of people know. Outdoor air pollution, this is New York City during the wildfire. These levels hit not 9, these hit 500, 600 microgram per cubic meter. Outdoor air pollution penetrates inside our buildings. And because you spend most of your time breathing indoor air, the majority of your exposure to outdoor air pollution happens indoors. So when Mayor Adams, maybe the wrong reference at this point, but this will be a critique of him too, so maybe it's the right reference. During the wildfires, he's telling people, go inside. Okay, that's good advice, but it's incomplete. Go inside to places where you have good filtration, or they should have been providing places that had good filtration, because most of what people are breathing in terms of outdoor air pollution was happening inside. And we've shown this. So this black line up here are the particle levels during the wildfire event in New York City. Extraordinarily high levels, dangerous. The lines you can't really see, that's indoor air quality particle levels in buildings with good filtration. So you can disentangle these effects and keep people safe indoors, even when there are climate-related threats, including extreme heat, wildfire smoke. So that's where we are in this kind of buildings space. We have all of this momentum in the system. We see some pressures coming in from the climate side, but ultimately, if you wrap it all together, there are these COVID and climate are ushering in a new level of attention to our buildings that we've never had. And now the question John and I have been asking in these case studies is, well, what are the economics around it? Who decides? Will policy be the driver? Is it market-driven? And what are the factors that will determine the success in the market around this healthy buildings movement? Okay, John, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really pleased to be here. So I spent 30 years in real estate and construction, and I'm in the finance unit at Harvard Business School. But I'm interested in the thing, like the buildings and the people, not just the portfolio trading. And a lot of what I look at is what happens in the 3 largest asset classes in the world. One is single-family homes. The second is commercial real estate, cash-flowing real estate, like office buildings, hotels, apartments. And the third is what we call the mush. I'm not sure if you call it that in your world. Museums, universities, schools, and hospitals. And all of them have this sort of difference between what the occupants experience, what the individual companies making these decisions, like tenants, like law firms renting space in a law firm experience, and what the landlord does. So often it's a landlord spends money on a healthy building or energy efficient building, the landlord doesn't get that benefit, the tenant benefits. So why would the landlord spend any money to do it? That's what Joe and I wanted to tease out in this case, because if the tenant company is paying for all the energy and is bearing the cost of all unhealthy people, why would the landlord do more than just bare bones? That's what we wanted to tease out. So go back into what Joe said earlier. We do spend 90% of our time indoors. So there's lots to talk about outdoor air quality, what's going on in the world, parts per million. But you can think about your indoor age. So I'm in my late 60s, which means I spent 45 years indoors, in buildings, in schools, in my car, in my house, all these things. So indoor matters tremendously. People haven't really thought about it that hard. Joe's group has done work around lots of aspects around healthy buildings. Many of them are pretty obvious to an occupant. Like you can tell if it's wet, looking at moisture. You can tell if there's dust and pests. You can see the mouse droppings. You can tell if it's noisy, but what's really harder to tell is on the top, ventilation and air quality, because you can't, if you can see it, you know you got a problem. But otherwise, you have to use sensors to look at it. What got interesting to me was at the Center for the Environment at Harvard, we have these monthly presentations, and Joe came to present this cognitive function study he did here at the Chan School. And many of you are probably familiar with this, but I'll summarize it. They wanted to know, do people perform differently with different environmental functions in the air? So volunteers did their work in this office building. There's somewhere else, and underneath is all these pipes and tubes and everything else, where the researchers are changing the level of the CO2s, particulates, and volatile organic compounds. Double-blind experiment, peer-reviewed, reproducible results, and the results around cognition look like this in terms of bar charts. The one I found more interesting was looking like this. So some of the things that were measured were things like applied activity level, basic activity level, crisis response, task orientation, information sharing, strategy. There's ways to measure strategy. All these data points are individual people. Every single person in the study, except for a couple outliers in breadth, performed worse when the air quality was worse. You kind of know this intuitively, but to have this kind of evidence to show to a building landlord or a tenant or a bank was very interesting to me. Joe and I often talk about how some of this information will propagate. Joe's happy with the regulations and all that. I'm sort of the Watergate era, follow the money. Remember that, what Deep Throat said? Some of you are younger than that. But I'm interested in how's the money going to go into these buildings. So I saw this as a real estate guy thinking, I've been thinking about energy efficiency for decades. Energy efficiency is pennies, but you can measure it. Somebody can measure that and get a pat in the head because the building's more energy efficient. The cognitive function is much harder to measure, but as soon as I saw this, I thought, we're chasing the wrong thing. We're chasing pennies around energy efficiency when there's dollars and tens of dollars on the table here around cognitive function. So you may not believe that. So I thought since it's Joe's room, we'll turn this back to him to quiz you.
All right, just for a second. So we've done this cognitive function work for a long time, but I want to give you a sense of what the cognitive tests are like, at least a quick one. So you're going to participate, and you have to be loud and vocal when I tell you the instructions. I'm going to flash something on the screen. You've got to give your answer fast as you can and say it loud, okay? What you're going to do is just tell me the color you see. You're going to say the color you see, okay?
Red, blue, green, blue, red, yellow, green, blue, red, purple, yellow.
All right, very good. Well, not so good. Not so good, actually. Not great. All right, but you can see what's happening there. So this is a simple cognitive test called the Stroop test. And you heard, I don't know, like half the room probably got some wrong. What's happening is your brain is automatically reading the words, right? You want to spit that out, but you know the game is telling you. So some of you get it wrong, but the rest of you, even that pause you feel, that's the cognitive dissonance as your brain is trying to remember the rules of the game, and there's a pause that takes place. And we use the Stroop test in studies globally, just like this, where people are playing games on their phone, and we relate it back to the air quality. We just did this with HBS students and school public health students in a paper that's going to publish very soon. And what we're looking for is, one, did you get it right? A whole bunch of fails. What was the duration of that pause? Like, I wanted to take you to work through it, even if you held the wrong answer for a second. And then how many can you get through in what amount of time? And there's learning effects. If we did it again, you get better. No one would make the obvious mistakes. And we take account for things like that and these learning effects, a day of the week. We don't test people on Monday mornings when they're just getting in, or Friday afternoon, or maybe we shouldn't test on Saturdays when people are not top functioning. But that's what we're doing, and we're linking it back to indoor air quality in buildings. We've shown this in that COG effect study, a double-blinded study. We've done this in buildings all over the world, and we consistently see that effect. And this is a simple version of some of the cognitive tests. All right, so you're all part of the study. Good work.
So that persuaded me, both the data and also doing the test. And then I thought, what would persuade an office tenant and an office landlord? In some ways, it's the most difficult situation to think about because there's so many different incentives, split incentives around who wants to do what. And so I set out to illustrate some of this the way that I used to illustrate energy efficiency finance.
John,
Wrong clicker. With, of course, a pro forma for a building. This is not in the case study. This is in the book in chapter 5, but I'll explain to you what it says. So we're assuming that this company, Health and Wealth Inc., is a service business. There's an accounting firm or a law firm or something like that. So they have mostly payroll, and they have 40 employees. The average salary is about $75,000, probably not in Massachusetts. And for a typical service business like this, payroll is half their revenue. They're paying the people to do the consulting or the legal work or the accounting work. And so the baseline here is their revenue might be $6 million if you extend this. The payroll is $3 million of that. The rent is $300,000, and the utilities are $30,000. So this is a rule that the real estate company, Jones Lang LaSalle, promulgated about the 330-300 rule. And one of the things that lots of tenants miss is that their payroll is a huge number compared to their rent and a colossal number compared to the utilities. So if they're busy chasing a couple pennies in not changing the filters or in not opening the windows, maybe they're missing something here and they're actually paying a lot more otherwise. So as you extend this through, the net income before taxes in this sort of standalone building is $1,670,000. So the net income after taxes, $1,195,000, and about 20% revenue to the bottom line before taxes or bonuses or anything like that. So that's kind of the baseline for this law firm, consulting firm, search firm, real estate brokerage. That's the baseline. So imagine putting the building to work for you around these employees and around this baseline. Theoretically, conceptually, that was how real estate people think. They think, I don't know what the rent's going to be. Let's project the rent. I don't know what the cost is going to be. We'll project the cost. I don't know the interest rate. We'll project the interest rate, and we'll get a box of possible agreement. Empiricists hate this because there's not any data behind it, but that is how real estate people think going forward. They financially model it. So what we looked at here is suppose, just what if, suppose we spent another $40 a year per person on energy, which is largely running the fans more, opening the windows, changing the filters, maybe upgrade the filter. What would you have to believe to have this make sense? Suppose the payroll effect was 1% improvement. A lot of you have seen this kind of math, 200 work days. If somebody's in the office 2 days more because they're not sick, well, that's the payroll effect, and you get that benefit. What if there was a revenue effect or a productivity boost? That's sort of the magic thing, is can we get more top line? It's not hard to think of people doing this Stroop test. If they feel better at the end of the day, they process 2 more claims, they write 2 more blog posts, they review 2 more referee journal articles, they meet with 2 more students or whatever it is, and the top line could increase. By a pretty small number, you saw much bigger numbers in the way the cognitive function changed, but Joe and I didn't really dare to put a big number here because there's so many other factors in productivity besides how good the air is. We wanted people to be able to do their best, and then they have to also work out the issues of the job description, the bad boss, what's going on at home, those kind of things which matter in productivity. So with these, what we thought were pretty reasonable assumptions, we modeled out from a real estate point of view what would be the impact. And you can see here that the impact on, let me back up one, on operating expenses in the left here is pretty de minimis. Okay, we spend a little bit more money on operating expenses, but we get a lot more top line because these people are doing more work. They're going out and making more, cold calls to try and sell you something or get you to sign up with Xfinity or something. And that's not a good example, perhaps, but and they're not as sick, so they're doing well here. So how does this play out? The difference here is from tenant net income of $1,000,001 to tenant net income of $1,272,000. That's 10% increase in net income if you believe these kind of numbers. So what I usually do with my MBA students is say, do you believe it? You're all public health people, so of course you believe it. But what I'd like you to do actually is argue it one way or the other. Oh, where's that gray one? Show us later, I guess. What would be the counter arguments? Let me ask you that. I think all of you in the room, this is your careers. You believe this is true. What would you hear as backwash from some tenant or bank or somebody like that? Yeah. Maybe we could spend the $30,000 somewhere else. Yeah. For example. So addressing health, or at least addressing employee comfort, but this maybe isn't the best way to spend it. All right. Yeah. So the first point is this isn't much of an improvement over a modern baseline today. A good building is going to be good anyway. This is incremental. Yeah. They don't pump any CO2 in. We breathe it out, but yes. So the second comment is totally on point. It has nothing to do with this spreadsheet, but it's totally on point. So one of the decisions that Joe and I had as educators is why look at this amazingly fancy building on Park Avenue that's so expensive and has all this glass and everything else. What we ought to go do is look at A/B testing of 2 claims processings and 2 warehouses and 2 crappy old buildings somewhere in the center of the country or in India or something like that. That would be more relevant. The decision we made was it would get more attention because of Norman Foster. And that would help us to get more people looking at it. But for me, as an energy and climate person, you're totally right that all this glass and everything else is way overshadows the health impacts. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a fair point. Did you have another one? All right. So our next book, we need some more peer reviewers. Would you be interested in helping with that? The other piece of pushback that I hear a lot is frequently, how do I measure productivity? Because we just put a number here. And the other is, like, so what? Who gets to keep this money? You could argue that maybe this extra $100,000 would go into bonuses. People might like that better. Or you may argue that it should go into paying the landlord to do something with the lights, because the landlord puts the lights in place. It's kind of in negotiation, they talk about a zone of possible agreement, all the places where you might wind up. And I'm trying to model a zone of possible agreement here. And some of the pushback is exactly what we get. There also are firms who say, yeah, we're a trading company. We're like the tenant on the top floor of this building is Citadel, which is a fast trading private equity firm. And the sharper those people can be, the more they make, and they've already bought every other amenity already. So then the question is, okay, this is the frosting for the elite of the elite. How is this word going to propagate out in the world? Did I see a hand up here? So Joe and I wrote about this also. If they're working at home, how healthy is their home? And one of the things we advocated was for companies, if people are doing remote work, yes, you gave them a new monitor, fantastic. You gave them an ergonomic mouse pad or something like that. Why don't you give them an air quality monitor and give them some money to run their air conditioning more? Or during the Texas grid freeze, people were freezing to death. Why wouldn't it be good for the companies to come out and do that? So I'm ducking your question, saying it's hard to measure. But if a company was thinking about impact, the $30,000, if people are working at home and living at home, they're spending 24 hours a day at home, why not help them make their home air healthier. That'd be how I'd advocate for the 30,000 without answering your question.
I'll let you know about another study. So this cog effect study is now a series of 6 or 7 studies. The last one that just got published, we looked at people's homes and we gave them air quality monitors, and we actually saw a link between air quality in your home office, whether that's your couch or wherever you're working from, and their cognitive function performance. And this time we extended it, not simply the Stroop effect or little math questions, but we actually looked at creativity tests. And again, we show that your home office is influencing your cognitive function performance, not just on the math side of the equation, but also on the creativity side of work performance. So we kind of use this to extend, hey, who's responsible for me? You send people home to this hybrid work, but this is also influencing their productivity. Air quality matters along with everything else. But we're trying to make the case that air quality has kind of been the ignored part of this equation.
Later on, we connect some other dots around the sensors. I'm the volunteer chairman of the board of a local hospital, and we're thinking a lot about value-based contracting and how can we keep people healthy. And you can certainly imagine having them with a Whoop or an Apple Watch or something and having air quality monitor at home and helping that situation to be better. You're likely to reduce their cost in the hospital. And then if you match up these alliances between, say, Google and State Farm or ADT and Aetna, the insurance companies are busy measuring stuff in your house anyway. Like, either this is really creepy or it's a way to keep people healthy and work going forward. So now that I'm involved in that aspect of health delivery, it's been interesting for me as well. The other thing that we're happy about here is this actually got some real estate people to look at these kind of numbers and think about these issues. So for you as health pros, you know this stuff. Most of these, my colleagues, the other finance mercenaries at Harvard Business School haven't really thought about the people at all. And to get them to look at something like this and think, does it even matter, is a success. And a lot of commercial real estate people have wound up using this book going forward. So we wrote the case study that you have about the healthiest building. And the question for Levinson is, should he actually spend the money on this other stuff? I think that the point is well made. Should he spend the money at all? But is there incremental money to spend on health on top of everything else? And Harvard Business Review did a podcast with us, and then our book, as Joe said, came out in March of 2020. So it was really bad for society, but it was really good for book marketing. That happened. We did a lot of work together around aerosols and COVID. So this simple thing is a back of the envelope real estate snapshot. Is anybody here like a real estate person who wants to describe what a real estate pro forma works and can tell me what a cap rate is? Nobody is? So lots of times when I work with Joe's students, I say, you got to know a little bit about the money and how these real estate people think. And essentially the way real estate people think about a building first is to say, how much I'm going to spend, how much I'm going to make, what's the percent, what's the ratio? Okay, good. Ultimately, what can I sell it for, and what's the return on that? So in this instance, this building has construction costs of about, where's this go? The development cost for this building is about $1,173,000. So you're going to spend about $1,173,000 on it based on this construction cost. They have rental revenue baseline. They're going to get, in this case, about $180 a square foot. And so they have rental revenue of $73 million a year is projected. The building isn't built yet. This is their financial projection going forward. They're going to borrow at some rate, but it essentially means that they are going to earn 6% per year in a stabilized year. When the building is up, it's occupied, they're collecting the rent, they're going to make a 6% cash on cost return, which seems like a pretty low return to me for the amount of risk they're taking, but there's other reasons why they did it. But that's the baseline. They're making 6% on their money without counting. I know those of you who are finance jocks are going to say discounted cash flow, terminal value, that's all correct. But here is a snapshot of time. So the real estate people are thinking, this construction cost, this revenue, what are we making? So the way we frame this question for the students and for executives is, will the tenants care? There's all this other stuff in this building, and what is in the case study is these two pro formas with a healthy building and a non-healthy building. The baseline here that's still in that financial model is that there are these possibilities to say, what is the capital cost impact? What is the rent impact as multipliers? Like it's 2% more, it's 5% less. So again, it's not empirical. It's what they're getting from their engineers as estimates. So there's landlord capital expenditure. What's the landlord going to spend? In this particular example, it says, well, they might spend 2% more in the building for premium ventilation and filtration. It's about 30% more in the mechanical system. The mechanical system's a smaller portion. They might also do healthy building certification year by year by year. They might have well or fit well or something like that. They might change their operating expenses here, the capital expenses, one time the operating expenses, and maybe they'll get more rent. So the way this is filled in here is they spend more money on capital expenditure and don't get anything more here. But you can toggle these on and off. So we say if there's no premium ventilation, no impact, no impact, no impact in commissioning the building annually, and this flows through, and there's so zero influence at the bottom because this is the baseline, not making any of the healthy building expenditures. They spend all the other crazy money and all the glass and the towers and the fins and all this, and even acquiring the site, but nothing on healthy buildings. So that winds up being an impact on baseline cash flows is nothing. So what we're trying to game out for David Levinson, the landlord, is it worth spending this extra money on the building health aspects? So here's a comparison as if all these toggles are on. So here the healthy building decisions are all no, and let's toggle them on with these assumptions up here around rent and CapEx as if the building's all healthy. Again, what you have to believe. So here is more, we spend about 5% more building the building, and maybe we'll get another 4 or 5% in rent. That would be the proof in the pudding of the earlier spreadsheet that I showed you. So trying this on for zone of possible agreement, those costs, toggle everything on. We're going to build it healthy. We're going to commission it every year. We're going to get it certified every year so that the tenants know that a third-party entity says it's got good air quality. So if you toggle them as all yes, the difference in incremental cost is about $5.8 million in net operating income modeled if they get a rent increase over what they're going to get otherwise because somebody's persuaded that this is worth being here, and the rest of the A-class buildings that are really good aren't as good as this one. That really underscores the point that you made. The other buildings are pretty good. The other buildings aren't terrible. The second piece, so with these assumptions, the one-time capital expenditure for this extraordinary health is $12 million. The operating expense is $3 million more because they have to run this more efficiently. They spend more money on energy, and the rent goes up by $9 million. So $9 million. And the rent is $9 million more, but the operating expenditure is this. The net is this. So they get $5.8 million more per year from having spent $12 million. So 5.8 over 12 is a 47% year-over-year return on their investment. And remember, the building baseline was 6%. So if you believe these numbers, spending $12 million to get a 50% annual return on a building that's otherwise earning 6% is a pretty good idea. Do you believe these numbers? Remember, this is a projection anyway, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, so this is elite building for elite tenants in an elite space in an elite city. Great. As a unicorn, but it's not generalizable. Yeah. Yeah. Remember, I'm not a real estate broker. I'm just a teacher. So go ahead and say whatever you want. Yeah. In the Life Plus, yes. Yeah, two ones that used to be elite that sort of wound up being standards include elevators and air conditioning. Yeah, very hard sell. Way back in the day when Mr. Otis invented these things, these elevators were expensive. And I don't know if Carrier invented air conditioning or not, but so this is a very slow-moving industry where things don't change very fast. You build a building, it's there for 50 to 100 years, so the stock doesn't turn over as fast as your iPhone. I still have an iPhone 10, so I guess I'm supposed to get the iPhone 35 now. But anyway, buildings stay there for a very long time, and the innovations flow really slowly. And part of what Joe and I write in the book is, I'll show you in a minute, the value chain that makes decisions. There's a huge amount of inertia. There's not really clear incentives. There's terrible information, and there are lots of incumbents in place who don't want to be moved. So the question for us really is not, is it for the elite of the elite of the elite, but will these ideas propagate out to, mom and pop, $20 a square foot, dentist and two law firms in Peoria, or will they propagate to India or China or Shanghai as teachers and public health people? Yeah.
I wanted to add something because Tristan, your comment's really good about, and John mentioned the why we did this first. So this is a unique building for sure. But one of the reasons I partnered with John early on was prior to the pandemic, the public health argument was not winning for building healthy buildings. I could throw particle numbers, I could throw hundreds of studies from everybody, and it wasn't landing. It wasn't until we put the business case in the book, and I write for HBR now a lot, that public health adoption reached the decision makers in the C-suite that said, oh, okay, I believe that number. I read HBR, and that sounds right to me. Let's do it. So it's all based on good public health science, but we couldn't break through. So that's one of the reasons I think this is important. The other thing that happened with this building that is unique is that it served another purpose, and we'll talk about another building in New York that serves a similar purpose, is that there was pushback from the industry that it couldn't be done. So the system said, slow system, the designers, architects, we can't build buildings with better air quality, better filtration, it's going to cost too much. So there was reluctance to do anything. So I think we need some of these flashy buildings as a way to break through and say, look, the economics look good. And by the way, it's totally doable. This is not, and then we start to see it propagate, and that's where it becomes useful from a real public health lens, and why I talked about policy. The only way this benefits everybody everywhere is if we get the standards changed so that every building is designed this way, and it's not a premium, it's just the way it's done. But you need the economic drivers and the models, or else the industry is just like, that's not the way we do it. So anyway, that's a little bit of the kind of hit or like strategic thinking about why this tack to ultimately our goal. I'm a public health professor. The goal is, everybody's just breathing good air quality everywhere indoors. And it felt stuck to me. It wasn't happening.
As it's turned out in the capital markets, there's been a huge influence here because investors don't want to invest anymore in an unhealthy building that's going to have litigation. Insurance companies don't want to be part of it. And every real estate cycle flushes out the bad buildings. And almost every city in the world has outdated buildings with fixed windows and not enough space for the ventilation that aren't worth what their mortgage is, and they're being foreclosed on. But the premium buildings like this are being purchased. Or we think about these roadside hotels in Massachusetts, in the United States. The ones that just condition your air, make it hotter or colder in the little hotel room, and in the walk-in hotel in the Motel 6 or something like that. People don't want to stay in those. They're getting terrible reviews in TripAdvisor and everywhere else, and the values are going down, the mortgages are going down, the rents are going down, and the ones that have better ventilation that's measurable are doing well. So the bad buildings flush out, and then the new buildings have some of these other benefits. Yeah. I would say no, largely because of the energy use in this building is pretty high. So you think about climate, think about your indoor climate. And Joe said a slide earlier. New build in the United States is relatively inconsequential because new commercial buildings are pretty energy efficient anyway, and the air quality is decent. Elsewhere in the world, not so. And I've done a lot of work in emerging markets, and it turns out to be cost efficient to spend more money on almost a passive building quality building that has triple glazed windows and air recirculation and recycling and heat pumps, that pays for itself from an energy point of view. Total side benefit is with this ventilation and air recirculation, you also have people who are healthier. But what drove it was the energy cost. So let me talk a little bit about what will move. How do you make a difference here? So we talked about this. Do you think it's outcomes? People believe that. I want to talk a little bit about my industry, the real estate industry, because it's really hard to change stuff to the point that it was brought up here. And I like these sort of back of the envelope drawings. I'm not quite as good an artist as Norman Foster, so it looks like this. But we all know that there's a general contractor, developer, property owner, whether it's Harvard or whether it's Vornado or Equity Office or Boston Properties or somebody like that. There's also a lot of other players in this value chain or chain of contract. So the designers have working for them structural engineer, mechanical engineers, acoustic engineer, health engineers, all this stuff. The general contractor, generally in the United States model, has 20 or 50 specialty subcontractors on foundations, heating, all these kind of things, steel and roofing. And even the property owner has all these other characters in the stream here. So it's called the chain of contract because these are all contracts between all the parties. And if you think about the flows in this system, the product flows this way. The mud turns into bricks, turns into walls, turns into rent, turns into mortgages, turns into private equity hedge funds. It also turns into space that people use. The money flows the other way. The money flows from the tenant company and rent to the property owner, to the developer in the long run, but not chronologically, because in the course of time, the building gets built earlier. And there's all these other characters even before this. They're in our space that we're talking about today, about heating, ventilating, air conditioning. There are also all these, in the American model, ductwork subcontractor, installation subcontractor, equipment, piping, controls. Apparently, the control sub has to fix the batteries up here. And way back here are these building product manufacturers at the bottom of this chain, but they're at the top of their own chain. They think they're Carrier, Trane, Westinghouse, Mitsubishi, Panasonic. They're all at the top of their chain. And over here are all these characters who are doing private equity, mezzanine debt, bank debt, all this stuff. Most of my HBS students want to work here, and they don't really understand how this works, but they don't want to be investing in a building that's going to be outdated in 10 or 15 years because the health is bad. So who do you think it drives innovation in this chain? The finance guys drive innovation? Why? Looking for the return? Okay. They're looking for a return. They also are looking for a risk-adjusted return. Are they interested in innovation that involves risk? Possibly. Yeah. Okay. Who drives innovation in this chain? Yeah. Okay. In this model, they're not really doing any work themselves. So I used to be a general contractor in Boston. When I started in the business, we did a lot of these things ourselves, 50 years ago. But now it's almost all subcontracted. So how is a general contractor going to, what happened to my clicker?
So to the left of the general contractor is the innovation to make the people on the right make more money.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. Any other idea? So the farther back you go is where the technology originates. Way back here are people making the fans and filters. Here's Baltimore Air Coil, and here's Trane and Carrier and Mitsubishi making heat pumps. But they're not talking directly to way up here to the developer, and the developer has all these other characters going on. Designer, yeah, say more. That's right. Oh, the napkin guy? Well, that's also interesting. If you have a star architect, often they'll influence that. Many other architects are just hard to say, look, just draw this thing, I need a stamp on it, go away. I don't care if it's going to be published or not. I saw a hand back here, too. Yeah. So the answer is all these people have to do it, but they need to get the information that this stuff actually works. They need to think I'm going to be able to make some money at it. They need to think it's not going to break and fall apart. So that's part of why elevators, air conditioning, and rubber roofs were not used a lot initially because they were so risky and the people didn't want to risk doing that. So what we wrote about is incentives, inertia, incumbents, and it's very hard to push this through. So if we see something that's an obvious benefit from a public health point of view, thinking about how do you propagate it through here is difficult. I think
John,
it's going to be led a lot through the money, through the
Lindsay up there.
investors, insurance companies. Sorry.
Lindsay had a comment too.
Oh, yeah.
I am. I saw your hand up.
No, I was going to say that the property owner perhaps is most incentivized because they are essentially the customer of everyone to the left, but they're going to make their money off of what's on the right.
They have to, the property owner would have to believe the tenant company cares. Then you get to this question of do they care? And whether they care about employee health or ESG or some other thing is an aspect that matters to them. So this is the last thing I usually ask in my executive programs at the end of the students. So imagine like 10 years from now, 2035, most tenants going to care about healthy buildings and pay premium rent? Or are most tenants going to care about healthy buildings, not pay premium rent? They'll reject the unhealthy buildings, but they'll do it themselves. Thank you very much. Or are they going to make their sprouts healthy on their own without the landlord, or they're not going to care at all? Yeah.
I don't see anything around marketing and promotion. I don't see anything like public service announcements on TV saying, you should live in a healthy building. Where's that?
People heard the question. You think what? Trends. Trends will change. And Joe talked about democratization. So as people start to understand this issue and have these handheld monitors so they can go out and test for themselves and not rely on some, you're trained as an industrial hygienist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't need industrial hygienists to come in and do all this stuff. You know, when the white lab coats and the beaker and $10,000, they give the money just to one person, the information to one person. We think that the combination of the democratization of these sensors, the social media sharing of information on sensors, and the interest in the financial markets and insurance markets around health will be what winds up driving a lot of this.
Can I give you an example of what I'm seeing in the market too? So I work with a couple of these big commercial real estate firms, and a big driver is coming from the investment community. And you see this in that, right, so you have commercial, you have a depressed commercial market right now, low occupancy rates, interest rates are high. You see commercial owners giving buildings back to the banks, properties that went from $500 million to $100 million. And so these investors are worried about their next investment and they want to future-proof any investment. And they're demanding, so it's a tenant market, they're demanding that these new buildings are climate friendly, fully decarbonized, and have all these healthy building attributes. So I see that pressure coming and it's changing the developer. The developers are responding to that. And they're all trying to compete. They have to hit their ESG goals, decarbonization goals, climate goals, healthy material goals, indoor air quality goals. So a lot of that's being driven by the big dollars that I see that's what's driving uptake. During COVID, the uptake was, hey, my business shutting down unless people are back in there. What do I have to do? Sure, I'll do some of these air quality improvements. It'll help.
But let me extend some of this out into other spots. So I had breakfast this morning at Harvard Business School with a guy from India who's back for his reunion. He's a real estate person. He has an investment in Noida. The air quality in Delhi is terrible. So you can't really rely on bringing all this outside air because the outside air is worse. So he's busy adding these filtration systems so the buildings are measurably better than the outdoor air quality. For elites in Delhi, Shanghai, Los Angeles, Beijing, Mexico, this is likely to happen. The other aspect of air quality down below the elites is largely around heat. And many of our colleagues who are working on issues of heat, also in India, South Asia, and other parts of the world, as another public health issue, and are there things you can do in the buildings and in the urban design that reduce the impact of heat? So that's where a lot of this is going beyond just indoor air quality in fancy buildings in New York.
We brought in Joe to pull with us in terms of moving out of corporate headquarters.
Who's we?
Pfizer.
Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, yeah.
So a healthcare company. And I mean, my first reaction when I saw the studies was that I was going to put a CO2 sensor in the CFO's office.
Oh, because his cognition was better, you mean? Yeah.
That would be the way I could measure it. It's all we don't move headquarters very often. It's about 60 years that we were in the old one. And so the idea of looking at it, I mean, I think we see it with LEED and how that's been marketed, and you see it on the outside of buildings. I think that employees.
That also took 30 years to propagate.
Exactly.
And it hasn't propagated everywhere, but a lot of it's, yeah.
Exactly. I think that the same opportunities there. And I think the other part from Joe's studies, these are buildings that are to the point of the difference between an ordinary building and a healthy building. The ordinary building is meeting ASHRAE standards, meeting the design standards, and you still have the performance issues. These were buildings where you can take a different measure. And I'm just curious where the standards are going to catch up with your work.
Joe, let's hear what the other question was too. That
Yeah.
right in front of you was a question as well. You had a question too?
Yeah, it was just the issue of government incentives. So if the government, like both local, state, federal, whether there were incentives that could lead to cleaner buildings.
Let's see if there's some more. We only have a little more time. Are there more questions as well?
And mine's just related to that. What are the legislative changes that
I can talk about that.
elicit these? And I think that would impact what's going on in 2035.
Yeah, so just like I was surprised to see the New York Times cover this 60 Minutes, there's been things that have surprised me just in the past couple months on the legislation side. So for example, New York City has 4 bills right now they're trying to pass to require air quality monitoring in all government buildings and schools. Massachusetts has a similar bill. A bipartisan group just put forward legislation to focus on indoor air quality, increase funding to the EPA to increase work on their indoor air quality program, create a certification, set new health-based targets, and unlock some of the financials. During the pandemic, some bipartisan legislation was put forward, did not pass. It was going to give a rebate to businesses that invested in air quality improvements. So again, for me, like these, some of them are landing, some are not, but to me, it's the big trend here. I've been in this field for a long time. No one's ever talking about indoor air quality, but now you have this happening through all levels of government. Boston Public Schools monitoring air quality. These are big, big changes that are happening. So you see the legislation coming behind some of the market-driven stuff. Tom's work at Pfizer was before COVID. This is all pre-COVID. This is put in place. You see the market kind of leading some of the standards. You have a big event like COVID, waking people up, the policymakers, that maybe it's these standards, some of it's voluntary standards, but also government regulation, kind of working through it. But that's all in the past like 2 months, this new legislation.
I see two kinds of building owners too, whether it's in museums, schools, and hospitals or commercial. Like some of the landlords hate this idea. It's really expensive. If your indoor air is bad and everybody knows it, you just made the value of building decline. This is like a taking. They have these like Fifth Amendment unreasonable land taking questions around having this stuff promoted. And on the other hand, you have the ones who are competing and thinking, oh, cool, my building is healthier and I can do some things that are not that expensive. And I'm going to have the monitor right in the lobby so people know. So you have these two different camps, one resisting and one saying, I'm for. Yeah.
Hi there. Shadi Kurd, alum and proud faculty member in the Environmental Health Department. This is fantastic. And I'm sorry I missed the beginning because you might have already said this. But is there data that shows that in buildings where initiatives like this have already been put in place, that productivity improves? And basically what I'm wondering is this, because this is fantastic that, for example, JP Morgan is an adopter, right, of these principles. And, from, again, the public health framework, what goes through my mind is, can we capitalize on, like, competition, peer pressure, kind of thing where, this in and of itself, I think is great because, other players in the market will say, oh, well, look what JP Morgan's doing, maybe we should do it just on the fact that they're like a major player and
Yeah.
people want to be like that. But if there's actual data behind it too that shows that a certain company implemented these measures and like over time there was increased productivity, that's amazing. Does that exist?
Yeah, so I'll address that, and I think you're right on. Let me address that last part on like the
He
competition.
said yes to the question, not to where the data exists.
Well, I'm gonna
The
get
answer-
to it.
The answer is no. But go
So,
ahead.
but at 425, to your point about like the competition. So this building came after. So what is it? How does it advance the stuff at 425 in the case? It addresses your point. This is now a building that has, the acceptable standard, which was like 15 CFM per person. We want 30 CFM. This does 40 CFM per person. There's no other building in the world that's doing this. It's ahead of the science. High levels of filtration, and to your point, it's an all-electric tower sourced with renewable energy contracts. So it's a building that's showing you can do health plus energy. So they took the 425. Norman also designers went a step further. There's already buildings planned on Park Ave that are meeting this, but also beyond New York City, this is starting to propagate because it's a competition. You don't want to be the company that says, wait, what is JP Morgan doing? And I also think, I was just talking to a group in Mexico interested in this Healthy Buildings program, and what they needed was their executives to hear that JP Morgan's doing this and Amazon is doing it. And as much as maybe you don't like that, this is what's driving their executives to say, wait a second, these are our future tenants. They lease space in our buildings in Mexico. And if my CEO sees that, it's going to change behavior. To your point of the question about productivity in the building, think about it. You all have epidemiological training. The challenge is you can probably show it. So people are just starting to design these buildings, and they're tracing some of these metrics. But think about what the number of people you need to see in a study that's not a controlled setting to be able to see that effect, right? A statistical effect. So the nurses' health study is tens of thousands of people tracked for 10 years. You could do this, but no one's funding the nurses' health. These are millions and millions of dollars of studying, of funding. So we want to see that happen. I think you'd see the effect. Every study that looks at micropopulation sees it, but to roll it out in a company like this, you'd have to roll it out. It'd be a 10-year study across hundreds of buildings.
The other way you can look at productivity is through recruiting. So people, whether they're elite or whether they're working in some high school somewhere, they'd rather work in a building where they're going to feel better or not. So they're getting this sort of hard to measure productivity benefit by getting better people. Now, how do you measure that empirically? No idea.
The insurance, I love the idea. And actually, Tricia, we talked about this at a conference. Like, if you could tie in the insurance premium part, hey, and you can actually have the data on things like sickness, illness, premiums, right? You could track that. It's already tracked. Yeah. I like it. Thanks. We are right at, this wraps at 11:30, correct? We're right at time. So, I'm doing your job. Sorry. But before the official conclusion, let me just say thanks. It's been a real privilege to be at the School of Public Health. I'm passionate about the topic of healthy buildings. I love that Harvard has the ecosystem. It allows us to work with people like John. We collaborate with people at the graduate school of design. I'm co-teaching my course with someone at the design school. And it's really this kind of magic that lets us kind of extend the public health value proposition beyond the walls of public health. We have these home and away lectures, and it's really great. We get some of the business school business school students not always thinking of the mercenary language. They're not always all mercenaries. We inject some public health good into them. But also, I think it's good for our students. My students, there's a little bit of reality to say, okay, we know this is good science. We know we want to do this. And then they see his value chain. And it's like, wait, which lever do we pull? And where the money flows to actually have influence. So it's been a great partnership. And I want to thank John for coming over to our school and sharing his knowledge with us. So, oh, yeah, sure. Oh, sorry, thanks. Yeah.
Go ahead. Excellent. Thank you. Fascinating conversation. Let's give a round of applause for Joe and Jeff. Joe, John, thank you very much for joining us here today, opening up this program, and that was a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much. The recording, this session was recorded, and you will get after the weekend, you will get that recording sent to you, so you can review it. Lots to think about, lots to contemplate. I'm going to think by one of the sensors when I go home. So there you. Our next step, or the next part of this day programming, is the awards luncheon, where we're going to celebrate the alumni awardees, and that part of the programming is going to take place in a few minutes. in the cafeteria upstairs. So let's make our way up there, and we'll see you all in the cafeteria. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.